Welcome to ATL Prime Sports, powered by the Stables Network. I'm your host, JJ Djurjevic. I'm doing it solo dolo tonight. I'm filling in for Stephanie. I'm filling in for TC, and our prayers are going out to our beloved TC is in the hospital. He is battling something with his kidneys or something of that nature. And we are praying for TC, and this show is dedicated to Todd Quarter, our friend TC. Steph filling in for you, ATL Traffic Lady on Twitter at ATL Traffic Lady. Please follow us on Twitter there at ATL Traffic Lady, at Mancini Sports, at JJ Get You One, at Quarter Todd, and of course at ATL Prime Sports, and also at the Stables Network. Please feel free to chime in throughout the show on Twitter, or dial us up at 720-707-269-99. Our meeting ID is 179-057-108 with a #/ whichever you prefer on the end. Got lots to cover on the show today. Got Dave Cohen, voice of the Georgia State Panthers, coming on to talk a little football and basketball. Of course, it's Championship Saturday, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to break down all 5 Power 5 conference games. And we're going to get out of here. It's going to be a little short show. We're just kind of catching up from the Thanksgiving holidays. I hope everybody had a wonderful and a happy and a safe holiday. I wish you guys the best New Year and the best of holiday seasons up to come. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and start talking about what has happened over the last couple weeks. Well, the top 4 are out. It's pretty much been the same the last 3 or 4 weeks. You got Ohio State and LSU who have flip-flopped a couple times. Now it's Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, and Georgia at the top. You have Utah on the outside looking in at 5, and we go from there. Alabama's the big storyline. They fell back all the way to 12. In front of them at number 11 is Auburn. So lots of craziness has happened over the last couple weeks. Stand by. We got the conference championship games left. Got a lot to play for in the non-Power 5 conference champions. I know Wayne's going to be interested in that AAC game. The Memphis versus Cincinnati game, the American Athletic Conference Championship game. Memphis comes in as 9-point favorites, as they should, as they beat the Cincinnati Bearcats earlier in the year. They earned the right to this championship game. And here we are, 9-point favorites, and they're playing at the Liberty Bowl at home. So we'll see if they can win that game and be the top of the Power 5 conferences and get that New Year's Six Bowl. Let's go ahead and start talking about some other things. The Braves signed Cole Hamels to a 1-year, $18 million deal today. It's going to be huge for the Atlanta Braves. They are in the hunt for a world championship. They've still got a couple more pieces they need to sign. Once they sign those pieces, a lot of people, I see a lot of people leaning towards the Braves signing Josh Donaldson. They aligned their closer issues, their bullpen issues. They re-signed Darren O'Day. They go after Will Smith. They get a reliable closer. Now they have 3 or 4 guys that they can rotate in and out there and get the job done at the end of the day. So we'll go ahead. We'll start breaking down the Power 5 championship games until Dave Cohen, voice of the Georgia State Panthers, joins the show here momentarily. We'll go ahead and get into our championship week predictions / breakdowns. It's championship week in college football, folks, this weekend. Break down the Power 5 championship games and who wins them. Well, here it is. Pac-12, we'll start it off. It's on Friday night. It is going to be the first one up. So I figured, why not make it be the first one we are talking about? We're up. They're ready. They put it on Friday night so everybody could see them. It's here it is. It's number 5 Utah. It's 11-1, 8-1 in the Pac-12, the 9-game conference schedule. It's number 13 Utah. It's number 5 Utah versus number 13 Oregon. And we'll get to that here momentarily. We're going to go ahead and we're going to bring in Dave Cohen, voice of the Georgia State Panthers, joins us right now. We're going to talk about the Georgia State Panthers and their successful season. Dave, welcome back to ATL Prime Sports. How you doing, man? Dave, you with us?
Yeah, this is Wayne.
Oh, it's Wayne. Okay, sorry, Wayne. I thought that was Dave calling in there. Well, Wayne,
I don't want to step. I don't want to step on Dave's time now if he's supposed to be calling.
It's okay, man. We'll get you real quick, and when I see Dave, we'll go over here, man. We're still getting used to this app thing. So,
okay.
Wayne, you got a big championship game this weekend, man. We Memphis versus Cincinnati there.
Cincinnati, right. That'll be number 2 in the Liberty Bowl in just as many weeks, so we're excited about that. It looks like we're headed towards the Cotton Bowl either way, and the talk that I've seen, the 3 opponents that Memphis could face in the Cotton Bowl, I've heard Alabama, Florida, or even Auburn. And I would say the toughest of those 3, in my opinion, would be Florida, because Dan Mullen really coaches his team to whatever opponent he's facing, whereas Alabama and Auburn tend to stick to whatever their normal game plan is. So I would say Florida, to me, would be the toughest opponent.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun championship weekend. It's gonna be fun to see how all these bowls play out. Wayne, I'm gonna get your thought on that in a second. I am gonna put you on a brief hold. Let's get to Dave Cohen. We'll get to the guest, and then I want to get back to you, Wayne, and talk more about Memphis football and the future of Mike Norvell. We'll talk about that in a second. How about that?
Cool. All right.
All right, Dave. We welcome Dave Cohen, voice of the Georgia State Panthers, on with us. Dave, welcome into ATL Prime Sports, man, and it's good to have you back. How was your Thanksgiving?
Oh, it's great, and appreciate you guys having me, and shout out to Wayne there in Memphis. I always enjoy when Georgia State comes through Memphis on the way to play Arkansas State. Sometimes we've stayed there as opposed to Jonesboro, but and I'm sure Wayne's been there. Rendezvous, obviously, down there by the Peabody, and then Central Barbecue over there behind the Lorraine. So looking forward to getting there this year when we make that Arkansas State trip, hopefully.
Absolutely. Dave, good to have you back on. The Panthers finished 7-5 on the season, or going bowling. I see some bowl projections have the Panthers playing in Tucson. Some have them in the Camellia Bowl in Montgomery. Do the players, coaches, heck, even yourself, have a preference of where you guys go for a bowl game?
Well, I was talking with our director of athletics earlier today down at Georgia State Stadium, and I said, do we have any inkling right now as to where it would be? And said probably not till either late Saturday night or sometime on Sunday, because on Saturday you've got the Sun Belt Conference Championship game up in Boone with Appalachian State and Louisiana Lafayette. Obviously, whoever wins that is going to the RL Carriers Bowl at the Superdome in New Orleans. And then the second place team, see, that's what I'm not 100% sure of. Whoever loses that game, what bowl do they go to? For us, we've been to the AutoNation Cure Bowl twice. Fantastic experience. If that's what it is, to me that's one of the better, if not the best bowl in the Sun Belt Conference with regards to being a destination spot. And the folks down in Orlando that run that Cure Bowl, which is one of just 3 bowls in the Orlando area, they do a fantastic job hospitality-wise, as you can imagine, with the teams that are playing in not only that bowl, obviously, but the other 2. So that, the AutoNation Cure Bowl, hey, that would be fantastic. If not, like you said, it could be the Camellia Bowl in Montgomery, the LendingTree.com Bowl down in Mobile, or the Nova Home Loans Arizona Bowl all the way out in Tucson. Just the tough one about that, although I'm sure it would be cool to go to Tucson. I've been in Phoenix and Flagstaff, never been through Tucson, but the question then becomes, number one, how many fans will follow Georgia State football out to Tucson, Arizona? with all the costs that come into just getting out there. And so that's the one, although it would be kind of cool to be out there from a ticket sales standpoint. Whoever from the Sun Belt ends up in that bowl, that obviously becomes a little bit of a challenge. Orlando, as I said, great destination. You don't have to really convince people to make that trip. Montgomery is, a 3-hour drive from downtown Atlanta, so that one, makes sense. And, Mobile is 5 hours. We play down there at Ladd-Peebles Stadium, where we've been playing South Alabama in regular season games anyway. So, and Mobile is a cool place to go and hang out for a few days. So, listen, wherever it is, and honestly, I don't know right now. It'll be one of those four. Whatever it is, it's great to be talking about Georgia State playing in a postseason bowl game after last year we talked about a 2-10 season. So whatever it is, we'll take it.
I'm the same way. I was enjoying watching the season. I was ashamed to see Dan Ellington go down. Luckily, he was healthy enough to come back. But how healthy is Dan Ellington? And how healthy will he be for this bowl game?
Well, I have not talked to him or seen him since we got back from Statesboro last Saturday night when we lost down at Georgia Southern. And along with the frustration, if you watched or listened to that game, he was really frustrated in that ball game. And I'm sure part of it is just due to the fact that, I'm not saying we would have won the game if he wasn't injured, but it certainly would have changed the dynamics because his inability to scramble and run, and he was our second leading rusher, puts a big dent in the offense for Georgia State because they were just really able to key on Dan, number one, and Georgia Southern was pretty good about getting pressure on Dan, which really, totally took him out of his element. And then they did a good job on Trey Barnett and Destin Coates, our other two running backs. So we really did not run the ball anywhere near as successfully as we've been running it during the regular season. And, defensively, we had a tough time with Georgia Southern's, obviously, triple option offense that they run with. They ran it pretty well. It kind of reminded me of how well they played up at Appalachian State, who's the only team to beat Appalachian State this year, and they beat them up on the mountain at Boone. It was Georgia Southern, I think, week 9 of the regular season. So Georgia Southern has, certainly played better down the stretch. I even said to the color commentator on their radio network that I know a little bit, he came over to our booth after the game, and I said, how have you guys only won 7 games? I mean, they're 7-5 like we are.
Yeah.
I saw you guys beat Appalachian State, and I just got done watching you, execute your offense against us as well as your defense. How is it you guys have only won 7 games? And, kind of rolled his eyes and shook his head. And, they've had their issues along the way this year as well. But for Georgia State, I don't know exactly how healthy he was. He had to be not carried off because he couldn't walk. A couple of our big linemen carried Dan off the field late in that ball game Saturday night at Statesboro. I guess the little bit of saving grace is that no matter what bowl game we're in, it's he's going to have a good solid 3 weeks or maybe more to get treatment, to get as healthy as he possibly can. He's a senior. He's probably not. I don't know what his plans are after Georgia State, but this might be the final time he plays, in a football game unless he decides to pursue it beyond college. So I'm just happy for him that they had a successful season coming off a 2-10 campaign last year, that the seniors will go out playing in a bowl game, hopefully winning a bowl game, but at the end of the day, getting to experience the seniors during their final year of what it's like to play in a bowl environment. So from that standpoint, no matter how healthy he is, and I think that with the time off and the treatment that he's been getting and will be getting in the next 2-3 weeks, again, he won't be 100%, he won't be 90%, but even if he's back to being 75%, that's I'd rather have a Dan Ellington at 75% than no Dan Ellington at all. So.
Absolutely. Dan Ellington's one of those X-Factor players without him, your team. I should say MVP.
And by the way, he got second team all Sun Belt Conference vote from the voting amongst the media, that came out today. So I was happy for him. Trey Barnett and Hunter Atkinson got the all Sun Belt Conference first team. Dan Ellington was all Sun Belt Conference second team, along with one other Panther. And then there were 2 that were all third team as well. But I was happy for Dan to make all second team.
You're listening to Dave Cohen, voice of the Georgia State Panthers, football, baseball, basketball. Wow, early signing day is right around the corner, Dave. What's the early signing class going to look like for the Panthers?
Well, I'm not 100% sure. I follow recruiting to a certain extent, and then I wait basically the signing date to see who actually, of the committed, actually ends up signing and showing up. Obviously, you're going to constantly have to reinforce your offensive and defensive lines. Along the offensive line, we're going to lose one, and that's Hunter Atkinson out of West Hall High School up in the Gainesville area. And, he's been solid this year. He's kind of the leader of that offensive line, which has allowed Georgia State to run the football statistically better than we've run it in the 10 years that Georgia State has had a football program. So, that's going to be a big loss. But I'm sure if you ask Coach Elliott and the offensive line coach and even the defensive line coach, you can never have enough depth on the offensive and defensive line. I think this is my personal opinion, because I don't know, everybody who they're recruiting. But even though we were 7-5 this year, and I think we've talked about this, if you look at the scores of some of our games defensively, we've still got to shore up things on the defensive side of the football. Even in games we've won, we're still giving up on average about 36 points a game, and that number has got to go down. I remember we talked about this early in the season when I remember I was kind of overemphasizing that we were allowing an average of 40 or 41 points a game last year during a 2-10 campaign. This year we managed to win 5 more ball games and should have won 6 more if we had beaten Texas State, not lost in triple overtime. Yet we've only shaved about 4 or 5 points off of the points allowed statistic, and that number has just got to go down. So losing Ed Kearney, the inside linebacker and one of our team captains, losing Remy Lazarus, our starting safety, and the other defensive team captain certainly did not help this year down the stretch. But still, even in games that we won, like beating Arkansas State and Troy, in each of those games scoring 52 points, we still gave up, in the mid to high 30s points-wise. And that number's got to go down, because that obviously puts pressure on your offense to have to score 40 to 45 to 50 points a game.
It's tough to win ball games like that. Very tough to win ball games like that.
Right. That number, that points allowed number, has got to go down.
It's got to. That comes with recruiting, and Coach Elliott, I'm sure, is working on that. Again, you're listening to Dave Cohen, voice of the Georgia State Panthers. Dave, let's shift over to basketball a little bit. The Panthers, the men's Panthers, are 5-3, and I know you're a busy man right now, but they competed against number 2, Duke. They lost by 11, as well as Georgetown losing by 8 in that game. Dave, these Panthers can score, averaging 80 points per game. Is this credit to Coach Lanier's system?
I think that's a big part of it. I think, 2 of the guys that were transfers who sat out last year, who have, they're eligible this year. They're playing Corey Allen, who was a transfer shooter from Detroit, and Justin Roberts, a transfer point guard from DePaul. Boy, those 2 guys have been fantastic so far. Corey's the leading scorer. I think he's averaging about 18 points a game, and Justin's averaging in and around 12. Corey was lights out. He had 8 3-pointers last night in the win over Dartmouth, and that one went to overtime. Our last 2 games have gone to overtime, both in the win column, Dartmouth, and then last Wednesday over the Charlotte 49ers. So they can score. They gave Duke a good run for their money up at Cameron a couple of 3 weeks ago. We were up there with the radio network to do that game, lost by 11. We were down by 2 at halftime, and then their point guard really kind of took over the ball game. He ended up scoring a career-high 31, if I remember correctly. And then we had no answer for their freshman 6'10 setter that night. So those 2 really were the ones that did a lot of damage. And then 2 days later, we go to Georgetown. We led that game by 6 at halftime, ended up losing. I don't know if you guys read about all the controversy going on at Georgetown here in the last 24 to 48 hours.
I have not gotten a chance to look into that. I've seen a little something about that. Inform me if you have something.
Well, I'm trying to remember all the players' names, but I know 2 of them started against us. They've lost at least 2, possibly 3 players for the rest of the season. And when I first read that story, I'm like, man, we were just there too early. If we played that game now without those players there,
Big difference.
I would feel pretty good about our ability to get out of the arena there in Washington with a win over Georgetown. They've really taken a hit right now. You'll have to look it up. If you Google the Georgetown basketball situation right now, all sorts of stories will come up with Patrick Ewing's ball club up there. But, boy, I'd love to play them now as opposed to playing them back when we did. And we still played them pretty well that Sunday night a couple of weeks ago when we played up there. We just didn't have enough down the stretch to keep up with some of the post players. That's when you jump up and you play at Georgetown, at Duke. You get into the second half, the latter minutes of the second half, and sometimes you can get worn down a little bit. And that's kind of what happened, to us in those ball games. And of course with Duke, I mean, look at Duke is Duke. It's Cameron Indoor Stadium. I thought our guys played them really as well as you could play them without being Stephen F. Austin and getting out of there with a win, as the Lumberjacks did, a week or so ago.
Absolutely.
But they carried the momentum out to California, and they won the last two games of that 2K Classic, the 2K Empire Classic. They had to go to California. I didn't make that trip with them because I was with football. But they won both games out there, and then they've won these last two, beating Charlotte and Dartmouth last night in overtime. And then we're on the road to Macon, Georgia on Saturday afternoon. We'll play at Mercer.
You're listening to Dave Cohen, voice of the Georgia State Panthers football, baseball, basketball. Dave, how can our listeners tune into Panther basketball throughout the season and possibly the bowl game?
Well, the bowl game, I'm not sure yet. It'll either be on 92.9 FM in Atlanta, 92.9 The Game, or it'll be on WAOK 1380. It really depends on which bowl it is, what the date is. And, they carry Atlanta Hawks basketball. So there's always something going on 92.9. The question is, schedule-wise, can they fit us there, or do we get moved to the AM? Georgia State's 50,000-watt, 88.5 FM WRAS will carry the game, whether it's live or tape delayed. And then, of course, now you can always listen into streaming audio via the TuneIn Radio app or by the Georgia State Athletics app, or you can stream it right off the Georgia State Athletics website. So whether it's actually over analog radio or via streaming audio, you can find Georgia State football and basketball somewhere in your dial.
Well, Dave, as always, we appreciate you coming on and giving us the Panther lowdown. Good luck to the Panthers in the upcoming bowl, and good luck to the Panthers in the basketball season. And obviously, good luck to you, Dave, in the upcoming calls, and happy holidays to you, Dave.
Yeah, same to you guys. Appreciate you having me on. Maybe we'll talk in the next few weeks here. We should find out Sunday what the bowl game is. And again, hopefully basketball can continue to play well right into the Sun Belt Conference portion of the schedule, and all will be well in Pantherland, as we say. Light it blue.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Dave. Go Panthers.
All right, you guys take it easy. Thank you.
Yes, sir. You too. Dave Cohen, voice of the Georgia State Panthers football, baseball, basketball, calling in as he always does. We appreciate him. Dave, thanks for everything you do for Georgia State Panthers basketball, baseball, and football. Let's go back and talk about these championship games. Right before Dave called in and we went to Wayne real quick, we were talking about the championship games, and that's when I'll bring our good friend Wayne back in. I'll bring Wayne back in, and let's do talk about that Cincinnati and Memphis game. That's one of the more intriguing matchups, in my opinion, over the weekend. I think the several of these Power 5 championship games are going to be decided, in my opinion. You'll hear later on. But Wayne, let's hear some of your opinions on that Cincinnati-Memphis game. I didn't mean to cut you off, but we had Dave calling in. So, Wayne, what you think's the keys to the game for your Memphis Tigers?
Well, they just had to score points and hold them on defense. It's really what they did the last time they played. I don't know that either team is going to really change much of their strategy to face each other. But, the second meeting in that shorter period of a time with two teams can always cause something radically different to happen. You just never know what to expect. But, of course, I'll always be pulling for Memphis to win over Cincinnati, even though my stepdad is a graduate of Cincinnati.
We'll see what happens. It's going to be fun to watch. But I wanted to bring you back mostly, Wayne. I wanted to hear your opinions on all the head coach talk and maybe where he goes. Have you heard anything of your head coach, Mike Norvell, staying or going?
I would hope that he would stay. The three places where I have heard that he, were most interested in him as a coach, I've heard Florida State, I've heard Ole Miss, and I've heard Arkansas.
Yeah, I've heard the same. I have a cousin of mine. He's the president of the Alumni Association at Ole Miss, and he told me that Matt Luke was fired a couple hours before he was, and I got the information from Bleacher Report hours later. I asked him who he thinks it was, and he was very high on Mike Norvell and Lane Kiffin. So, well, Wayne, as always, man, we appreciate you calling in. You got any final thoughts for us?
War Eagle. I know that's a sore spot for most Alabama fans to talk about, but it's always an exciting game.
Wow, what an iron
really,
ball.
a high-scoring game. I really didn't expect that many points to be scored, but it worked out in Auburn's favor in the end, and so it's a game of seconds. I'll tell you that.
Well, what are they going to call this one, Wayne? Are they going to call this one the second, or what? I mean, what's this one going to be called? The kick six? You got one extra second there put on. It went back to bite them, and
I think they may end up calling. I think they may end up calling it the 12th man.
The 12th man. It will have a great name, as it always does.
All right.
Wayne,
well, listen, I appreciate y'all having the show and hosting everything, and I appreciate the guy, giving a shout out to Memphis when they travel through here, going up to Arkansas State. And I'm going to send you some names of some guys here in Memphis that you might want to try to contact to have on the show just as guests or anything. Several sports guys here that are not necessarily big-time sports guys, but I think they're important enough where y'all might want to have them on the show.
We'd love to, man. Wayne, reach out.
Right.
You can always inbox me. And I can also give you my personal cell phone number off air, of course.
Oh.
So,
we'll contact you while they're over the DM there on Twitter, and we'll straighten it all out.
Sounds good. Well, Wayne, always good to hear from you, man. Hope you had a happy Thanksgiving. And, heck, man, go Tigers.
Thanks a lot, man.
Yes, sir. Wayne from Memphis, Tennessee, calling in. As always, we appreciate all of our callers. Give us a buzz, folks. 720-707-2699. Meeting ID 179-057-108 with a # /hashtag, whichever one you prefer. Let's get back into the championship week breakdown. I was talking about the Pac-12 championship where it boasts number 5 Utah versus number 13 Oregon. Utah's a 6-point favorite. The over-under in that game's 47. Right now, I'm leaning towards the Utah Utes. Utah has won 8 straight games since its loss to Southern Cal in September, and they've won those games pretty handily by an average of 29 points per game. Also, in that game, the Utes were down a player for much of that game. Star running back Zach Moss, who's led the Pac-12 in rushing and touchdowns. So Zach Moss, you add Zach Moss to that game, you're easily talking about possibly a 12-0 Utah team at number 4 in the country, and maybe Georgia's on the outside looking at. Very close. This team's played very, very good football. They play complementary football. Moss and quarterback Tyler Huntley go together like peanut butter and jelly. Moss runs up, opens up the passing lanes for the play action and the deep ball. And, there's a lot of hype around Oregon quarterback Justin Herbert, but the hype could be about the Utes deep. We've only allowed 12 touchdown passes all year. They've intercepted, 13 passes. So they've intercepted more passes than they've actually given up. That's pretty impressive stat. Pretty dominant stat. I think the Utes do get this game. I think the Utes are a better football team. You look at the eye test from the year. I like the Utes. I watched them the other day against Colorado. I put them on, and I said, hey, this team can play football with anybody in the country. They're one of the best teams in the country, and they're never talked about. They lost 30-23 without a star running back at Southern Cal early in the season. It's a pretty credible loss if you ask me, when Southern Cal, I believe, went 8-4 on the season, and we're right behind Utah, nipping at their heels the entire season in the conference race. Washington State, Mike Leach team, 38-13. They beat Oregon State in conference 52-7. Arizona State was ranked at the time. They beat them 21-3. Beat Cal 35-0. Beat Washington. It was a battle by 5 points. Dominated UCLA 49-3. Arizona 35-7, and Colorado 45-15. Folks, if you're not watching the Utah Utes, this is a good team. If Georgia loses that game on Saturday afternoon, Utah wins, they're in the college football playoffs. And watch out. Their defense can withstand the big boys. I think if they match up with a Clemson, an LSU, or an Ohio State, whoever they face in that first round, however it shakes out, and it looks like they would probably face Ohio State, seeing how everything plays out. I think they could contain Justin Fields and J.K. Dobbins for 4 quarters in one game. Justin Fields is a little hobbled right now. That knee's a little sprained. He will have time to heal that knee. But I do like the Utes in that game. I'd like the Utes to win the Pac-12 championship. I think they'll cover that spread. The over-under in this game, that'd be a tricky bet, folks. I'd go with the over. I do think Utah and Oregon will score enough points to cover the 47. We'll move to the Big 12 championship, folks. Lots to cover. 5 championship games to talk about. Big 12, number 7 Baylor, number 6 Oklahoma. Oklahoma's 9-point favorites right now. This is the only conference game that guarantees a rematch for the championship. 10 teams, 9-game conference schedule. I like Oklahoma in the rematch. Jalen Hurts, when he plays a clean game and the Sooners win easy, everybody's going to be looking back and saying, I just said it, because I did. You look at the game earlier in the season. Baylor gets up by 25 points. Jalen Hurts was throwing interceptions. They were fumbling the football. They weren't running the ball well. They weren't playing great defense. They hunkered down, forced turnovers in the second half, came back and won that game. This game is much like the SEC championship, in which it faces the conference's top offense in Oklahoma versus the conference's top defense in Baylor. But the Sooners are not bad on D this year either. They're 26th nationally in yards per game. So they got a pretty stout defense over there. It's something they haven't had in recent years, say when they got beat by Georgia in the Rose Bowl. Forcing turnovers were key, again, to that Sooners comeback. I think they'll probably do that again. I think Jalen Hurts will play a much cleaner game. And, again, that Sooners pass defense is pretty good. They're 22nd nationally and allowing only 195.9 yards a game passing. So this Sooners team is well-rounded. And if you're looking at another college football playoff blunder, if they win this tournament, this play-in game, Utah loses their play-in game, Georgia loses, Oklahoma's probably going to scoop up and get into that 4th spot. So there's a lot of scenarios here where a lot of teams can still get in that are in the 6 and 7, 8 range. So we'll see what happens. Probably not 8, but 4, 5, and 6 are definitely close. That's Utah and Oklahoma. We'll see what happens in the ACC championship game, but I pretty much think everybody knows, hey, we know what's going to happen here. Moving in, again, ACC championship, number 3 Clemson, 12-0, 8-0 in the ACC versus the 23rd ranked Virginia Cavaliers, who are 9-3 and 6-2 in the ACC. Folks, Clemson's a 28.5-point favorites. 28.5-point favorites in a championship game, a conference championship game. If I picked the Cavaliers, I'd be crazy. Clemson's going to win this game. They may cover that 28.5. I don't think they will, but they might. Clemson, there's a reason they're 28.5-point favorites. It's because the ACC has been pretty weak. This is their first ranked matchup of the season. Trevor Lawrence throwing for over 2,800 yards and 30 touchdowns, only 8 interceptions, has really cleaned up the interceptions the second half of the season. I don't think Bryce Perkins and the Cavaliers have a shot this time. They are building something pretty nice up there in Charlottesville, though. Cool stat. Pretty cool stat here. 7 teams in 7 different seasons have represented the ACC Coastal and the ACC Championship game. I don't think another conference could even script that if they tried. That just shows the lack of talent from the top of the ACC on down, and that's why I gotta go with the Clemson Tigers. I don't think Dabo Swinney will have any trouble in this game. I don't think it'll be that exciting to watch, and we'll see if Virginia can shock the world, because if they do, that's gonna shake up some standings in the college football playoff. Big Ten championship. Probably the second most coveted game of the weekend for the Power 5 conferences. Number 1, Ohio State, 12-0, 9-0 in the Big Ten, obviously. Versus Wisconsin, 10-2 versus 7-2 in the Big Ten. Ohio State 16.5-point favorites in this one. Another rematch in a conference title game. This one's unforced, not forced. No, I'm just kidding. The number 1 offense in the land should pull away late, much like the game earlier in the season. I really don't see Wisconsin and Jonathan Taylor getting going in this game, and it comes down to the Buckeyes being able to stop that guy, Jonathan Taylor, which they have done effectively the last 2 outings. In the 2007 conference championship game, 15 carries for Taylor, 41 yards. A Buckeyes win 27-21. This season's matchup earlier in the year, 20 carries, 52 yards. A Buckeyes win 38-7. So you see how effective Jonathan Taylor is to Cohen and that offense. If there's no running game, there's no passing game, there's no opening up the lane, then you get one-dimensional, and it's over real quickly. And I think that's what's going to happen here. Plus, you look on the other side of the football, Justin Fields could be a question mark, but I still think he'll be able to stay in the pocket, stay upright because of J.K. Dobbins. He's going to run the football effectively. He's going to get you probably 1 or 2 rushing touchdowns. He's top 10 in the nation in touchdowns. He's got 19. He's got over 1,600 yards rushing. He's a real equalizer to Jonathan Taylor if Taylor does get going, which I don't think he will. I think it's going to be much of the same. I like the Buckeyes. I like them to just barely cover. I like them to win this game by 17 points. That over-under is a tough bet. I'd stay away from it. I'd go on the under, just strictly thinking I don't think Wisconsin's going to score enough points on Ohio State's defense to get by. They scored 7 points last time. They scored 21 points the last time, and those were all pretty late if you remember that conference title game. Again, Buckeyes cover the spread, 16.5. Book it, they win by 17. Let's go to the grand finale of the night. What I'm going to wrap the show up with, again, a short show. This show is dedicated to my good friend, the co-host of the show, the spirit of the show, Todd Quarter, TC, battling right now. Let's give it up for TC, man. I respect you a lot, and we're praying for you. So let's go to the SEC title game. I know TC would love to be chit-chatting this up with me, because this is going to be a fun one to watch. It's going to be the cream of the crop, the creme de la creme, whatever you want to call it. It's the pinnacle matchup of the weekend. It faces the number 2 LSU Tigers versus the number 4 Georgia Bulldogs, and it's going to be a slugfest. It's Heisman favorite Joe Burrow versus trusty, dusty old quarterback Jake Fromm. Georgia's got the experience coming into this game. They have played in 3 straight SEC title games. That will make a difference. Georgia fans will be there. It is in Atlanta. There are plenty of reasons that point to both teams. You look at the spread in this game, it's LSU -7. The over-under is 54.5, which I think that's a pretty good book. I don't think it's going to be 54 points, ladies and gentlemen. I think this game is going to be a 21-17 job. So I think the bet there's the under. I think the Dogs win this game if it is a 24-17 game. And I'll say why. They're going to control the clock. They're going to limit Joe Burrow's possessions. They're going to limit the offense that averages 560 yards a game, which is just astronomical. But you look at Georgia's offense on the other side of it too. Not only is Georgia defense great, Georgia's offense is pretty efficient too. They average over 420 yards a game. they average over 32 points per game. So you're looking at Georgia's offense. Yes, sure, it struggled at times, but against Auburn, they scored 21 points. They were up 21-0. You look at LSU, they've played a great schedule. Probably deserve to be the number one team in the country, if you ask me. They went on a neutral site, well, basically to Texas, and they won 45-38. They beat Florida 42-28, pulled away pretty late in that game. And, of course, we all know what they did against Alabama and Auburn. 2-0 in those games, beat Auburn by 3, beat Alabama by 5 in a 46-41 shootout. They were up 20 points in that game. So you statistically look at Joe Burrow, the guy's solid. Again, the Heisman favorite. Not gonna take that away from him. But I don't think he's faced a defense like Georgia who's going to disguise looks. Or they're going to disguise blitz. They're going to cover drop back into coverage. It really confuses a lot of quarterbacks. When you get in the SEC title game, it comes down to not turning the ball over. Georgia's really only – Jake Fromm in general has only turned the ball over in the South Carolina game. I think Georgia has a lot to win. I would like to say Georgia just goes out and wins this game outright. But I'm picking the Georgia Bulldogs to cover the spread. And I'm picking them to win. I can't go against them. I said they were going to win the national championship at the beginning of the year. I'm going to stick with them as I have the whole year. I said this was their year. Here we are, Georgia versus LSU. I think Georgia's going to win. I think Georgia's going to win because of that defense. I think they're going to force a turnover. I think they're going to force Burrow to be one-dimensional. I think we're going to take away Edwards-Helaire, make him make Joe Burrow look to the outside, look for the deep ball. Georgia's one of the best passing defenses in the country. They are the second best scoring defense in the country behind Clemson. And I just think J.R. Reed and Richard LeCounte can manage the game in the backfield. If Jake Fromm, DeAndre Swift, looking like he is going to be healthy. Now, I know we're down George Pickens. The Bulldogs are down George Pickens and Lawrence Cager on the outside. They still have wide receivers out there that can make plays as long as DeAndre Swift, Brian Harrion and company are making good runs, gashing the defense for 4 or 5, 6 yards at a time. If that offensive line gets to push, because we all know LSU's defense is capable of giving up over 600 yards a game. And Georgia's offense, again, has averaged over 400 yards a game. They average over 30 points a game. They're a solid offense. They haven't looked as good yet. Jake Fromm hasn't completed 50% of his passes the last 4 games. He's due to break out. He's due to have a good game. And you look at the last 2 SEC championship performances for Jake Fromm, some of the best of all time. So I do like the Dogs to win it. It's hard for me to pick the Dogs. I really like the Tigers. But like I said, I'm picking the Dogs. They finished the season 11-1. Everybody counted them out. They've been in a playoff atmosphere since the loss to South Carolina. I think that means something here, and I think the Dogs take the game. I think it's going to be a 21-17 type matchup. I think it will be under that 54 points, and Georgia will win. They'll get in the college football playoff, but guess what? So will LSU. I think Ohio State winning and Clemson winning, there's your top 4. Ohio State will probably play LSU. They'll flip-flop LSU and Clemson. LSU will slide back to Georgia. Clemson will slide up to 2. I don't think they would put Georgia in front of Clemson or put them 2 or 3 or anything. I think LSU would fall to 4. They'd play Ohio State. Then you'd have Joe Burrow facing his former team. You'd have great storylines. If Georgia wins, then it's Fields versus Fromm. We get to see some crazy storylines. As long as Georgia wins this game, I think it'd be good for college football to see those storylines. Georgia wins the game. Georgia's going to go play on in most likely out west, and it should be a heck of a college football weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to sign off. We're doing a shorty today. I miss my buddy TC. TC, we're thinking of you. We're praying for you. And we're going to sign off early tonight. Stay tuned. We'll be back next week. Same time, same place. We'll be a full show. We'll have a full slate of guests. I will reach out to Dave. Hopefully Dave will join us again, and we can get more information on where the Panthers are going to go bowling. So, ladies and gentlemen, Wayne, thanks for your call. Thanks for all of our followers. ladies and gentlemen, same time, same place next week. I'm JJ for TC, for Stephanie Stallworth, Mark Mancini, and Breck running it behind the boards. I'm out. See you later.